Ladies and gentlemen, it is time for prize fighters, circus freaks, and gangsters. I'm Jamie.
And I'm Greta.
And as always, we are here to discuss all things 19th century, our favorite century, filled with food, fun, fraud, fashion, fracases, all kinds of F's.
And we have an extra special F for this movie, Jamie.
What is our extra special F for this episode?
Well, the consumption of beans and farting.
Yes, the very first fart in film. We're talking about 1974's Blazing Saddles. And is that the weirdest first ever? When I was watching I
didn't know that. I buy it.
Yeah, I had no idea. I didn't realize it was such a faux pas. You know, you figure it would have been like a Three Stooges gag or something.
Yes and no. Okay, so this whole thing is like kind of, as a parent, my worst nightmare, because I'm like, okay. I'm going to convince you that this is funny by explaining the joke to you. And I realized, like, I can't do that because if there's one thing you learn as being a parent, explaining jokes does not make them funny. No. You
just have to sort of get them, I guess. And but farts, I think farts are just funny in general. And
I mean, ask any 12-year-old anywhere in the world. That's always my question. Like, when different companies come out with these like clearly stupidly offensive or brand new logos that just look like a swirly poop, you're like, you need to bring in the team of bored 12-year-olds to show you where you are going so wrong.
You know what? I was astonished that it took so long to get a fart on a film, because so I was in Prague, and we were drunk, as one is in Prague, and we were in the sex toy museum, and they were showing the very first threesome in porn, and that was far earlier than 1974. Like, you're having threesomes on film, but no farts in it. You know what I mean? It's just, what? How did it take so long?
On the other hand, you know, it makes me feel ever better about my hot take that anytime you have a new visual medium, people use it for porn, like right out the gate.
Right out of the gate. First, I mean, it is their first thought. How can I get... It's a man's first thought, apparently, is like, how can I capture evidence that I have a penis for posterity?
Because, I mean, block printing, printing press, colored inks, fill, doesn't matter. And so the people who created the internet and once you could make little pictures with symbols, like the fact that they were shocked that people figured out immediately how to draw a penis with that, like, again, bring in the bored 12-year-olds already.
Hey, it's why we were watching Blazing Saddles on VHS and not Betamax. It's because the porn industry chose VHS.
Bumpa. All right, so yes, we are here to watch the Mel Brooks movie Blazing Saddles. It's sort of one of those comedy classics that was just in the air when we were growing up, for sure.
So I would venture to guess that you saw this far earlier than I did, because I don't know. When did you see it for the first time?
Well, when did you first see it? I didn't see it until college. This was like the 90s, man.
You know, then we saw it around the same time. I saw it maybe at a high school party. We used to have like Andrew Dice Clay, Sam Kinison, Monty Python, and this film, I think, in rotation at parties. So I didn't ever really watch it, though, until maybe 10 years ago.
Yeah, because I remember that I was like subjected to the girl movie, boy movie divide, and this was definitely a boy movie.
I had not ever considered that there was, but there really is. There's boy comedies, and then there weren't really girl comedies until recently, really.
No. And so since this wasn't in the theater, like, I went and saw a lot of quote unquote boy movies just because like that's what was in the theater. But since you had to go and sort of choose this and your friends had to agree on it when you went and picked out the VHS tape, or your parents were with you when you picked out the movie. There's no way. Like, my dad wasn't getting this movie to show me. I mean, he showed me all the James Bond movies, so anyway.
But no Mel Brooks.
But no Mel Brooks for a long time. Yeah.
My parents just weren't into the slapstick at all. My mom always hated it. It wasn't really my dad's thing either. So I wasn't really exposed to Mel Brooks until later on.
Oh yeah. My parents were not like this. This is funny. I think this is funny. You should watch it. So at least they didn't try to explain a lot of jokes to me. So, they had that going.
And we couldn't see this movie on TV because they...
Oh, boy. Will go into that.
Did you watch the making of for this?
No, I did not.
Okay, so they showed a TV edited for TV version of this, and they edited out all the farts. So it's just a bunch of people shifting uncomfortably in their seats, like doing a weird ballet. It is the weirdest thing in the world. So yeah, they're really, until Blockbuster Video, there was not a lot of opportunity for us to see this.
Right. So okay. So quick question up front. Should a person watch this in the 21st century? Debatable. The more interesting question is, should a person born in the 21st century watch this movie?
I would say yes. The answer is yes. And I think this film is important for a variety of reasons. Like, I'm interested to hear why you do not think, or why you might not think, that a person should see this.
I mean, I think a person born in the 21st century should know why people thought this movie was funny, what they were trying to do here, and specifically what the problem was they were fighting against. And that's sort of that, like, I don't want to explain the jokes, but I do want to explain the why it happened.
Well, so I think it's really important because the concept for this movie was to take 1974 and place it into 1874. Yeah. And they wanted to take a look at all the different racial issues that were going on in particular at the time. And these are still, in 1974, they were applying those to 1874, and we can apply them in the same way in 2024. I mean, good God, we rolled the clock back to 1974 for women's rights anyway. So, I mean, we're sitting there, really, we got the clock at 1974 pretty much in the United States right now anyway. So,
yeah. Well, and the other thing that they were fighting against, the other problem they were dealing with, was something called the Hays Code, or the, it is called the Hollywood Production Codes. And they basically ran from 1934 to 1968. So
when conservatives ruined film.
Yes, and there were this whole list of no-nos. And some of the major ones were no scenes of passion, unless they were essential to the film's plot. So there are a lot of movies where people would like go to get down and their heads would just disappear, and then like a curtain would be like blowing in the breeze in the window. There was no pointed profanity, so you couldn't say fuck, and you also couldn't flip somebody the bird. There was no quote-unquote sex perversion, and that's a fun one to look at in this film. You couldn't have any justification or explicit coverage of adultery, and it's important to remember at this time when people said adultery, they didn't just mean like cheating on your spouse. They also meant just having sex when you weren't married.
Oh, disgusting.
Right?
Even though 2/3 of Puritan children were born out of wedlock.
No sympathetic treatment of crime or criminals. No dancing with indecent moves. And
wait. I wonder how far they were taking that. So, like, say there's a criminal in a movie who like is kind of good looking or whatever, and then there's kind of a Florence Nightingale moment. She can't be like, ooh, you're kind of dreamy. None of that. She can't even treat his wounds. She's just like, fuck you, die, criminal.
Yeah, I don't know exactly where that all
went down. Well, she couldn't say fuck you and die.
Well, there you go.
She was a woman, so she'd probably just slap herself and walk off screen.
But there is definitely like the whole anti-hero thing. Like you couldn't do that the same way you can do that now. And you couldn't show any sort of like I don't know if this was official or not, but this was definitely understood. You couldn't have any sort of affectionate scene between people of any two races.
Yep.
So no going on a date, no holding hands, God forbid, no smooching. Like, nobody can smooch on film. But my very favorite is no quote unquote white slavery. Like, you could depict African American people enslaved, you could depict Chinese people enslaved, you could depict any person of color in a position of slavery, but for some reason, but if you have a white person in bondage, we could have that on film.
Oh, Tim Tebow, thank goodness for him. He's leading the charge now. There's 20,000 children that could be missing, but the FBI is not sure because they can't really track them because they don't. But he's going to find them because Jesus said so. And because they're white.
Only 20,000? I heard it was 20 million. Because if you add up all the reports online of all of the missing children that
Mathematics!
Oh my God. Ugh. But I think it'll be
Boy,
kind of
white
fun
slavery
to,
really does terrify certain people, though. It gives them, they're up at night like, oh, there's a slave somewhere who's white. Like, it wakes them up at night.
Yeah. But it'll be kind of fun going through and like seeing how many of these boxes they also managed to check in the Hays Code, because they did a job on it, and it's great.
So let's talk for a second about how important the Hays Code was. And there was the Comics Code that came out at a similar time that ruined comic books. Yeah. So the conservatives in the United States ruined a lot of things at once. Basically all pop culture. They got rid of horror movies and horror comic books. Like all the good comedies, anything that was sexy in nature, because they had a lot of racy movies back then. In the 20s.
And I think you like couldn't show blood flowing out of like a wound, like all of the splatter gore, like that was no. That's why like The Mummy was a horror movie, because there was no blood.
Oh, meanwhile, I mean, they had been doing practical effects since the medieval times for like gore effects and stuff like that on stage and stuff. So they were really, really good. I mean, there was one of them where they actually called people in for police to like investigate because they thought there was a murder on stage. Like, these things were so realistic that people even sitting in the front row thought it was real. And like, we lost all of that.
Oh, I mean,
because
the
conservatives
Passion
said,
plays where like Jesus is doing his station, like this guy would be like dripping blood and like wounds bursting out, like
like Jim Caviezel, just ripped and spurting blood.
Yes.
You can imagine it could be in your mind's eye, that liquid could be any liquid you could think of spurting onto you.
But yeah, the Hays Code and the Comics Code just like really pulled back, and directors had to get creative. I mean, the whole thing in Psycho where you see blood going down the drain, like that was Hitchcock, bastard that he was, walking up to the edge.
Yeah, and I mean, people say that's a scary horror movie, and I'm like, all right. But the birds, you show me the birds, that'll scare. I mean, that put me off birds for quite some time.
Maybe Psycho depends on your relationship with your mother. I don't know.
That could be, yeah. Or the number of times a day you talk to yourself.
Okay, so how does this film open?
How does this film open?
With a swelling orchestral score.
Oh, yes. Well, so this movie started out as like an actual serious film. It was like not super serious, but Alan Arkin was supposed to direct this thing.
Oh.
It was Alan Arkin, and it was going to star James Earl Jones. But it was such a parody of a Western that they ended up giving it to Mel Brooks. The whole project fell apart. They gave it to Mel Brooks, and he was like, "Oh, this is fucking ridiculous." So he called in Richard Pryor because he was going to have Richard Pryor play the Cleavon role, and they spent 8 weeks just like, it was 5 guys like doing a bunch of cocaine in a room, telling each other jokes, and they created this movie. And they didn't think anybody was going to see it. So they were trying to make it as over and as much as they possibly could.
As outrageous, yeah. And it's a swelling orchestral score to the opening of a Western, which now sounds insane to us. But part of what they were spoofing was like every film that Mel Brooks ended up watching as a kid was probably a musical, and half of them were Westerns. Like, a Western film is the most enduring genre of film forever in the U.S. film industry. They've been
Plus,
making
we were
them
deep in spaghetti westerns at this time. So Enrico Morricone was making this soaring orchestral numbers for all those Italian westerns.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was a big thing then.
Because, I mean, they were cheap. You didn't have to clear people out. There was a lot of sets you didn't have to build. You just kind of like go out to the back 40. And so this is all filmed kind of like where the TV show MASH happens. And we get to see the Star Trek rocks.
So this is where MASH was filmed?
It not exactly the same spot, but it's the same kind of area behind those hills outside Hollywood.
It was that guy's ranch, John Wayne's friend's ranch or whatever it was.
And so the soaring orchestral score happens, and the man singing the opening theme is Frankie Lane, who is mostly lost to history, but he is best known for singing the song Rawhide.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
The Rawhide just came up in the news because it was one of 10 songs most used by the U.S. military as sonic torture. That's no lie. It was used as sonic torture, that song.
Oh, shit. Okay, I'm definitely going to have to put a clip in there for the children at home who don't know.
Yeah, as performed by the Blues Brothers, specifically. So, there you go.
I mean, for God's sakes, John Wayne's first movie was in 1930. And
was it really?
Yes. And so this is like 40 years later. John Wayne's last Western was Rooster Cogburn, and that was in 1976.
Mel Brooks tried to get him for this movie, and he was like, I am sorry that I cannot be in it, but I will be the very first person to see it.
He was probably lying his face off. John Wayne was a very prideful dude.
Was he?
I don't think he had any sense of humor about his career.
I know nothing about John Wayne. The fact that everybody thought he was a tough guy, I always thought was preposterous. Just this drunken man just staggering around. He was a
draft dodger asshole who treated just about everybody in his life terribly.
Yeah, but he would have been perfect for the Waco Kid.
Yeah.
Well, so the Waco Kid was originally supposed to be an old alcoholic, not... okay. Yeah, and so... They went through a couple of people. He actually found like some old alcoholic actor to play the role, and then the guy fell off the wagon and they lost him. And so Mel Brooks himself said, like, I wanted an old alkie and I got a young Jew.
There you go. Okay. So, and yeah, as like you see the opening credits and then like you get a circle that's kind of melty and flames. And that's a joke about sometimes projector film would get stuck over the projector light and just burn up. Like, this is a thing that happened. I mean, we know nothing about that now because film on a what? Yeah.
The New York City film theaters that people were seeing this movie in were fucking gross. If you ever get a chance, I mean, have you ever seen documentaries on the theaters?
No.
Oh my God. There were bums in them. There were people having
rats running over your feet.
Yes. Yeah. Cause they were really old theaters that they like used for vaudeville. And then they switched to movie theaters after that. So, I mean, these are like from the 1870s and shit that they're just like rotting and falling apart and like, yeah, but Manhattan was disgusting back then. But that's where you had to go to see this movie, basically.
That we remember we did we did French Connection, and it proves your point right there.
Yep. Yeah, New York was gross. I don't know what Seattle looked like at that time.
We were a very clean, virtuous town, and afraid of you gross, disgusting East Coasters and your wicked ways.
Ah, yes. Gently sipping coffee. No.
We weren't. We were still a Sanka town at that point. Like, coffee didn't happen until later.
Oh, okay.
We were all industrious Boeing employees and stuff.
Ah, wow. And you know what? So this is how old we are. We would have to explain Sanka to people.
Oh, shit.
Instant coffee used to be a thing. You'll never have it, so you don't really need to worry about it now, though, I guess.
Yeah. We've gone from that. I mean, we may run out of coffee, but we'll never have instant coffee.
Only in jail do you have to use instant coffee.
Oh, jeez. Okay. So, like, like what at this point, God, a fifth, a quarter of all movies being made are like westerns, and of those, like a half of them open with a scene involving a railroad somehow. So this is just like, well, we're making a western, you gotta have the railroad in it.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, you gotta have all the people working on the railroad, and we had all the colors of the rainbow represented in this one too. Like that was pretty dead on. Like we had Chinese people, we had Hispanic people, we had black people, all of them working on the railroad.
And you had mostly white people being in the obnoxious overseer roles. And I mean, like this, it was so funny that as a spoof movie, this had better racial representation than just about any Western that was being made anywhere in Hollywood, which again was part of the gag. Like this was much more true to life of how life on the wild frontier looked than any other movie that was being made or had been made for a really long time.
Yeah, I mean, hell, like you were just talking about with John Wayne, it was only, 20 years earlier, John Wayne had played had played Genghis Khan. Although by the same token, during our lifetime, a white guy played Gandhi. So, we
you
also
mean
have Sir Ben Kingsley?
He's half Indian. He was born in India.
Is he really?
Yeah. He's half Indian.
Holy shit. Well, I'll be damned. I had no idea.
Yeah. So that is far less egregious than you would think.
Yeah, I guess so. Well, I retract my statement.
So it's not quite Scarlett Johansson level starring in Ghost in the Shell, but I mean, yeah, you know, for the time, they could have done
It's way better than
worse.
Elizabeth Warren. Yeah, way better than Elizabeth Warren.
Elizabeth Warren?
Yeah, she said she was a Native American, and
it
turned out she was like 6% or something like that.
Yeah. I mean, if she was doing that based on 23andMe, that's some bullshit. But I'm always willing to give people a pass who have had that kind of stuff passed down through family lore, because a lot of people do get that. But yeah, somebody who looks nothing like that and has no connection to it and has suffered none of the disadvantages, yeah, I'm like, all the way bullshit, stop it.
I don't know. That 23andMe, I don't really care, honestly. But I mean, if your family has told you that you've been Native American your entire life, that would make you that, wouldn't it?
I mean, and that's not what we're here to talk about.
Who knows?
What we're here to talk about...
No, it's not at all. We're off on a...
is obnoxious guys with stereotypical Surrey accents making fools of themselves.
Yeah, so Burton Gillum, the guy who plays Lyle, he really, like, he struggled to say some of the lines in there, and they really had to, like, egg him on. Like, Cleavon Little had to be like, it's okay. Like, I know you won't say these things for real. And he's like, I really don't want to say them. I don't like saying them. But yeah, it was like, he has a very love-hate relationship with this role.
Yeah, and for those of you that are out there and have no idea what we're talking about, this is back when everybody said the N-word to black folks. And, I mean, these are the people who said, oh, no, it was funny, it was loving, you know, calm down. And you're like, no, this movie makes it clear they're making a joke about how dickish people were being about it.
Yeah, and what's wild is the people who are saying the word that are the people, probably the only people in Hollywood who wouldn't say it in their own private life. Like they were like, they got the most non-racist people to play racist in a film, I guess, so nobody killed them, but also so it was funny rather than just cruel.
Well, right, and some of that discomfort comes through. I mean, this is very, like, the guys who made South Park grew up watching this film as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You can tell, because this film goes for the equal opportunity offender thing that South Park was definitely going for.
Oh, and the Wayans brothers, too. I mean, we would not have had the Scary Movie series or any of those. I mean, really any of the stuff they've made, because it's all spoofs. And I don't know if this is the first, like, spoof film, but it was the first really popular one of which I'm aware.
Yeah, it's not the first spoof film, but yes, it was the first, like, big budget, big production. And so we start off with what's supposed to be kind of like one of these things, like every, second movie with black people in it has them singing a spiritual at some point, which are like sort of these droning work songs, basically. Every culture has them. It's just they've sort of been given this like special place in American culture that is really super effed up. So instead of, they're like, sing a song. Instead of doing that, they sing a very explicitly white people song.
Yeah, that was like some kind of vaudeville song or something. I didn't really recognize it.
Okay, it's I Get a Kick Out of You. They changed the words a little bit, and this is the first Hays Code fuck you.
Okay.
Because I get a kick from cocaine.
Oh yeah, they really did
in there.
List them all off. So is this a song that was popular and like people knew?
Yeah. It was originally from the musical Chicago, and in its original version, it actually had lines about I get a kick from cocaine and a sniff and stuff like that. And so this was in 1934, and then the Hays Code came in, and so when they put it in film, they had to change that verse. So the fact that they brought it back, most people probably know it now if you've heard it. Frank Sinatra has a version of it, and so when he was in Paris, he recorded the cocaine verse.
Oh shit.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, people and it's so funny to hear like old people grumping about music today is just about drugs and sex. And it's like, yeah, well, it's always been about drugs and sex. It's always been. What the fuck else are we going to sing about?
It's just to versions of music that sound better to you because you grew up that's what you heard when you were a teenager. But yeah, so anyway, and so and this is a Mel Brooks shtick of getting the people in charge who are way up on their dignity to completely make entire fools of themselves. And so he gets the white folks doing what black people were made to do stereotypically on film. Like if you were a white director saying, I need some black guys dancing around, that's what they got.
Oh, so that's why he's like, oh, you should sing Camptown Races or Swing Low. Yeah. And I didn't even know Camptown Races was a minstrel song.
Oh, super. Yeah.
Jesus. I mean, minstrelsy is one of those things where it's like, I don't want to know history anymore. I'm going to go and bang my head on the wall or, I don't know, set my penis on fire. Literally do anything else.
See, this is the thing where I was just like, I am so fucking sick of being surprised by the just shittiness out there. But
ooh, it's wild.
And so,
minstrelsy. Do you want to describe minstrelsy? You probably know more about it than I do because my brain just screams.
Okay. So on one hand, it should be kind of an innocent thing. Like you think about if you ever went to summer camp or you did a talent show at your school, you just sort of look around what's popular culture, and then people do spoofs of or imitations of it. And that's cool. What's not cool is when you take something that's sort of around in the culture and then you exaggerate it to make the people look at sort of doing the performance that you're spoofing as absolute non-humans. And so basically for these talent shows and stuff, this is how it got started. They would imitate black spirituals and black folks making music, but make them as these idiot non-human children animal things, and just it was a way to degrade them instead of normally when you're doing a spoof you're like, I have some admiration for this, or I just enjoy it. Yeah,
to be clear, so Native Americans, at least according to the documentary Rumble, gave us the basis for all the the blues and things like that comes through. If you listen to their traditional music.
Native Americans?
Yes, Native Americans, in fact. So slaves got all the tunes from Native Americans. The documentary Rumble is phenomenal, and I highly recommend it.
Okay, I'll have to throw that.
I mean, you could just watch Native American women singing songs and in their native tongue, and it sounds like old spirituals, but just being son and you can't quite understand the words. It's wild. So, but then, so they melded all that culture and called it black, and then they were like, "Oh, your music's awesome. We're gonna make fun of you for making it and steal it at the same time.
Steal it from you and totally degrade you." And so a minstrel show is white folks would blacken their faces and then do these sort of highly exaggerated versions. I'd say the best popular culture representation of it that's out there that's actually won't get you killed for watching is Eddie Murphy's Buckwheat sketches. Because he's taking the whole minstrel thing and flipping it on its head. But it still does give you a flavor of what was going on.
And I will say that at least in the instance of one stupid but amazing baseball player, he was incapable. He would chase fire trucks and go fight fires at random during baseball games. But he also would do minstrel shows, and it was because he loved the music and the culture, not because he was trying to make fun of it. So, because they would perform alongside black people, which I find even stranger. But you got to make a living, I guess.
Well, and a funny thing is a lot of the sort of early 20th century, late 19th century caricatures of black people in cartoons was caricatures of people dressing up and doing blackface rather than of actual black people.
Oh, okay.
So, so many levels of completely effed. And
Jesus.
You're recording okay over there? Or are you just commenting on?
Oh yeah,
humanity?
it's fine. It's fine. I'm just, Jesus. It's just, wow. All right. So we're back in the 1974. We're at the beginning of this film, and yes, Negro spirituals.
However,
is what they're singing.
We jump right out of that into a gag that I definitely appreciated for them putting in here. How many movies did you watch as a child that included quicksand? And did you also think life would include way more quicksand than it did?
I genuinely thought if you walked into the woods and it was not in Pennsylvania, you were probably going to fall in quicksand. But you got to float. You can't, because we were all ready as kids. Like, fuck it, we know how to beat this quicksand. We were prepared for an eventuality that never came.
And so I just really love the quicksand gag was in there. But then we move on from the quicksand trope to...
They also had a hand cart in there, which seems to be in every one of those old-ass movies, is there's two guys just whipping past on a hand cart.
I figured those things had to be laying around, along with the old-timey wooden wheelbarrows as well.
Ah, yes. Just the ground was littered with them.
But so we move on from all those sight gags onto the spoof version of Dennis Strickland, our rich asshole trying to screw people over to make money off of railroad land. I mean,
boy, we do get a Dennis Strickland Buckley type situation right out of the gate here, don't we? It's like the funny version of the two. I love it.
Or Leary.
I mean, but we have Buckley too because so we got Governor Peter Maine is
Sam Blake.
Yes, Sam Blake, and then what the hell's his assistant's name?
Hedley Lamar.
Yes, Hedley. And they got sued by Hedy Lamarr, or she wanted money for it, and Mel Brooks was like, "It's Hedy Lamarr. Give her whatever she wants."
Yeah, I mean, and again, for the children at home, Hedy Lamarr was a big sort of early era glamorous film star, and so yes, this was totally a spoof on the Hedy Lamarr thing.
So was Lily Von Shtupp then kind of a spoof on Hedy Lamarr?
Maybe a little bit, but I think it was just more of the general showgirl, and then Mel Brooks's need to make fun of the Germans at any possible point.
Yeah, I felt like there was some Mae West in there too.
Oh, 100% Mae West, yeah. Why don't you come up and see me sometime?
Yeah. Oh, that's right. She didn't even say that line. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And
that was
Mae West, for the people who don't know, was in 1974 she was old, so she had kind of passed her prime. She did do a movie in the 80s, but she was really, really popular in through the 50s, like 30s through the 50s. She was basically like the hottest, sluttiest woman on the planet who was in the movies, and she was always like flaunting her sexuality, and in real life and on film, to the point where she actually bought the building she lived in because her boyfriend was black and he was barred from entering for his race. So she bought the building so she could fuck him at whenever she wanted.
But yeah, she was very much sort of like the Dita Von Teese, or who's this? She was the Kim Kardashian of her day.
Yeah. She didn't go as crazy as Madonna, but she was Madonna's like basic, like Madonna just stole her whole gimmick, every bit of it.
Yeah. And a lot of people will also call her the first drag queen because she really did sort of play up like huge makeup and just sort of like making her sexuality part of the performance.
Well, fun fact, she stole her entire gimmick from the woman who made the most money on vaudeville, whose name was Eva Tangway.
Yeah. I mean, these women who have figured out how to market their femininity in a very particular way. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, like the Roman empress who like came up from being a prostitute and street performer and ended up getting married to the Roman emperor. I mean, that's the pinnacle as far as I'm concerned.
There you go.
Talk about marketing your sex.
So yeah, it's I guess this trope goes all the way back throughout history, huh?
Oh yeah. I mean, forever and ever. And it's just so interesting about how women, if they just do things just right, they can get away with everything that just regular old women on the street are punished for on a daily basis.
They just have to get their hip to waist ratio exactly so.
And have a real thick skin. And so this brings up another question. There's like a whole thing where Hedley Lamarr is fondling the blindfolded Liberty. And I was like, He's not
fondling. He's fucking a statue of Lady Liberty.
Yes. And
he is humping it as he's talking about stealing from his constituents.
Yes. And part of me is like, is this supposed to be a spoof on how shittily women are treated in Hollywood? Or is it also just a flex that I have the budget to just have scantily clad women in my film? Because on one hand, Lily Von Stoop is kind of like a feminist clapback. But on the other hand, you know, you just got this woman in a bikini who just sits here and like looks ditzy. So
it was the 70s. I mean, weren't you one of the women in America who watched that fucking Mad Men show? I mean, that's what they did. They just hired women to like fuck in the office, didn't they?
To an extent, but I'm just like, where the world was in the 70s. I don't think Mel Brooks was like on the ball enough to be like, this is a satire. He's like, yeah, no, this is just like a movie with a bunch of dudes in it. Let's get some boobs in here.
Mel Brooks does like boobs.
Yeah. So It is kind of funny, like, where is this going? I don't know. But yeah, whatever.
I see what you mean, though. Did he know it was satire at the time?
Who knows? But they went for another like Hays Code fuck you when the Taggart guy says, no, the women will just rape the shit out of them, which is like several things in the Hays Code just right there, just a wham, wham, wham right off the top.
Oh, yeah. So the Reverend's talking about how like they're being overrun by
no. This is back when Taggart is talking to Hedley Lamarr like, oh, how are we going to chase people out of this town?
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah,
oh, yeah. And rape all the women. Because he was talking about smashing. We'll go all whomping and a whapping. And he was going to smash up all the places. And he's like, oh, so you're going to leave the women alone? And he's like, oh, no, we're going to rape them over and over.
Yeah. And again, like, that's the kind of thing that, you know, being in college and hearing that and like, okay, yeah. I'm like, is that set? I don't know if that's satire. That was just definitely one of the moments that always still knocks me. And this is why I'm like, I think people who are born in the 21st century can watch this. Just be aware. There's going to be a few moments that like you really are going to get knocked sideways by something that happens in this movie. There's a lot that's funny in here, but also maybe not. I don't know.
Again, putting this up against the Monster Squad, I can watch this movie over and over. I can't get 10 minutes into the Monster Squad. But genuinely, like by the fifth F-bomb, I'm like, I'm going to go find a child to beat up.
Well, oof. Let's talk Western town tropes. Now, in Warrior, you had made some comments about how the way they did the Barbary Coast, you're like, it looks like a musical's going to break out here any second. Just because, you know, these things are on a soundstage. This particular town, you know, is also another trope where, you know, but yeah, the sort of like idyllic Western town. And again, we get sort of the musical opening and, you know,
it's got that same, I don't even know what is that instrument? It's a harmonica playing. That wah, wah,
yeah.
wah, 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 wah.
Yeah. And, you know, it's so clean and prosperous and proper that we end up in the saloon and there's cows in the saloon. And I'm like, yeah, they're probably in there to improve the smell.
Yeah, I don't think they ever would have allowed cows in a bar back then, though.
Probably not. But from everything we've talked about, that certainly didn't cut down on the leavings of...
No, there's still a pot of piss, full pot of piss under probably every chair in that place. Can you? God damn, that must have smelled bad.
Right?
That must have smelled worse than a truck stop bathroom in 1986. And that's the worst smelling thing I've ever been in my life.
I mean, on the plus side, at least these buildings weren't constructed all that fully, so you had the chance of a nice breeze flowing through there.
Oh, yeah. Those things were definitely not built to code.
But, you know, you have the ruffians riding through there, and we get to see the Howard...
Oh, the Howard Johnson's ice cream shop with one flavor.
This is a joke that's not funny anymore, but yes, sort of like McDonald's, Howard Johnson's used to be just sprinkled all over the country. And so back when you went on road trips to visit your relatives or places, instead of flying, you know, you'd have to spend the night somewhere, you'd have to, you know, rest stops and whatever. And so these Howard Johnson's were these orange roofed hotel/restaurants where you'd stop. And they were known for having a gazillion ice cream flavors.
Oh, were they?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I assumed that it was a reference to Baskin & Robbins. Used to be Baskin & Robbins 31 flavors.
Yes. No, Baskin & Robbins was an imitation of Howard Johnson.
I'll be damned. Look at that. We had Howard Johnson's for like 5 minutes when I was a kid, but it was gone pretty quick.
Yep. Hojo's was known for their zillions of ice cream flavors and their fried shrimp.
Ah, well, there you go. Hojo's always seem to come in concert with Roy Rogers, who ties into this nicely as well. Roy Rogers became Hardee's, but it was named after, I don't know if it was ever owned by, but the actor Roy Rogers, who was a cowboy actor. And
again, another cowboy actor. So, but we do get the tropiest, trope-filled fight scene in the town. I mean, we get all of it. We get the guy dragged behind the horse on the rope. We get the muddy streets. We get a guy going not through one window, but coming back out the broken window.
And there was somebody swinging on a chandelier too, as I recall.
Yeah.
Wasn't it? Yeah.
But we get the bullet through the hat. I mean, it was,
they hit them all.
Priceless. And a lot of fun, and I'm glad they did it. But after the town gets all blowed up, we have the townspeople meeting in the church to complain about them outsiders messing up our town.
And that rabble thing was wholesale stolen by South Park, and I did not even realize it until this weekend. I was like, oh shit, that's where it came from in South Park. Both the rabble and the biker version of that where they just make motorcycle noises.
And god damn it, if those women aren't wearing bonnets, see?
Oh, there'll be trouble.
And I was totally laughing for as much nonsense and idiocy that goes on. They even had the poorer women with the bigger bonnets sitting in the back and the richer women with the smaller hats sitting in front, because that's how churches were arranged. You had the rich people in front and you had the poor people in the back.
Oh, I thought maybe they had the people with the small hats in front so that everybody in the back could see.
Maybe, but I was just laughing because I was like, oh my God, that is actually so true to life. So
That's amazing. I never would. There's probably no man on planet Earth who's ever noticed the bonnet situation. So now we're all aware.
Yeah, that's right. But I mean,
Bonnet Watch 2024.
we're just slapping down the stereotypes. We got the raggedy old preacher. We got the crazy ass prospector. I mean, was that the most Yosemite Sam mouth on that man or what?
That guy was amazing. He literally looked like the old-timey cartoon of a prospector, like in the Bugs Bunny cartoons, that just hops from foot to foot looking mad.
And the best part about him is, like, politics is politics is politics, because the one like mayor or whatever says, I'm glad those children got to hear that authentic frontier gibberish and the importance of that to keeping our American ways. I was just
That actually had me looking up authentic frontier gibberish to see if there was such a thing. But I imagine that there would have been some really bizarre colloquial languages that arose in places where, like, there's German settlers with, like, I don't know, Algonquin Indians that have been displaced, and then, like, whoever else, Spanish people, and they've got this weird pastiche language with a little bit of English thrown in. I'm sure there was some crazy shit going on with language back then.
Oh, yeah. I mean, talk about memes we lost to the mists of time. Damn.
Well, we're even losing the Southern accent. There was quite a row in it in the news in the last week. It was pretty funny.
Huh.
Yeah. Southerners are very upset that Southern children are learning regional neutral accents.
You're just blowing up our culture like a big bundle of dynamite through the window.
It was the vaccines. We're doing it with the vaccines. We're stealing all your accents.
Because we do get the dynamite thrown in through the window, like, Bugs Bunny level nonsense right there.
This whole movie, I mean, you could tell that Mel Brooks' favorite things growing up were Bugs Bunny, Three Stooges, the Three Musketeers, Zorro movies, and Westerns. Like, that's where he was. He loved those things.
And really just went all the way there. And I mean, we get our Sam Blake moment, the, like, rich guy politician who just wants to be in charge, but, like, doesn't want to have to do the in charge stuff. I mean, that is the governor that Mel Brooks is playing, and just, like, goes as big as he could at that age.
Oh, yeah. Even with, like, a cross eyes and the whole thing. Like, he really was like, this man is so stupid he can't even look at you with both eyes.
Yes, and that was very, like, the Buckley Sam Blake thing going down, where it's just like, no, just, and I think, from the 70s forward, somewhere in there, like, even from World War II forward, I think we had so many more well-meaning politicians in positions of power than we did, because this was such a great reflection of how 19th century politics worked. I mean, everything was for sale. Corruption was rampant. It was all over the place. The people in charge were usually some prominent person who didn't know what was going on. And I think we really got spoiled through a bunch of the 20th century, where there were a lot of good politicians. And really, we're going back to, pre-World War II politics right now.
Well, one other thing that was an interesting parallel between 1874 and 1974, like how they were trying to do that, and now, is that in 1874 they were in the midst of Reconstruction, and it was, the South fighting being human beings and us trying to force them to, and that failed. And then they tried to do the same thing in 1965, and there's all these riots. And I mean, even in New York, in Columbia University, in order to integrate their gym, it took 2 weeks of nonstop protests by students in 1968. In order to get in Columbia University, like, liberal as hell in the middle of New York City. So imagine what the rest of the country was like. So by 1974, it's still like they're still working on it. I mean, shit, we're still working on it now.
Right. And so it's always really funny to me how you talk about, people used to be so much better behaved and they would have never caused a ruckus like this. And I'm like, Yeah, they did. That's why we were so well behaved there for a chunk of time. Like, everybody got sick of it. And I think people thought, like, oh, well behaved was like how it was. I'm like, no, we have forgotten our rabble rousing past.
Oh, I mean, every city used to burn down every July 4th, basically. So there's a reason why fireworks are illegal now. But yeah, it's life was a lot more interesting and a lot less comfortable in every other time.
Oh, yeah. And yeah, people have definitely forgotten that. So nice work by Mel Brooks, calling the gold drapes in the Trump Oval Office. Well done. And totally making fun of the diversity hire. It's like, how can we make these people's life as terrible as possible? We'll hire a black sheriff, get credit for him, and then total thoughts and prayers as the townspeople just slaughter him.
My God, I didn't realize how timely this is, but like Alabama just got made DEI illegal, and so it's like this could be happening in Alabama right now.
So this movie's going to get banned in Florida and Alabama? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. No, because these people are so fucking dumb. They think that because they're saying the N-word, that it's their kind of movie.
Yeah.
They just get excited about the N-word. Kind of like the Second Amendment. They only pay attention to half the sentence.
Right. So you send the black sheriff off, and they had a lot of fun coding an 1874 sheriff in 1974, like, cool black swag.
Oh, yeah. He was, and this is such a fun gag that they do. And this was kind of my introduction to Blazing Saddles, was the sheriff is a nih, and then there would be a bell that would toll. So the sheriff is a nick dong, and then they would just keep doing that over and over and over as all these white people are saying the N-word about him. And it was... Keep going. I just love this gag so much. It was funny as hell.
Oh, yeah. But I mean, he's got the Gucci saddlebags. He's got the all one color suit going on. I mean, he looks smooth.
I didn't even realize he had Gucci saddlebags. Yeah, he did. He was like Billy D. Williams on that horse.
Yes. Yeah. And then later on, they have him in another outfit that's like red velour with white pinstripes. I mean, basically a lot of sort of like Russian mobster swag is directly taken from 70s black folk swag.
Oh yeah, this was just straight up pimp suits done in cowboy style.
Yes, it was so much fun.
I'm sure we're going to see people copying these suits going forward for Beyonce's new album on her tour. Like, I mean, these suits were made for that.
Oh yeah. Yeah, and so as he's riding through the world out there, he gets to go by the Count Basie Orchestra, who was a really famous big band black band director, and so this was a little bit of a fuck you as well. You would see black musicians in films, but you would never see them playing for black people.
Oh, like on American Bandstand, it was always white people in the crowd. American Bandstand being like the original version of TRL. And TRL, there's no comparison to, so I don't even... People used to get together in real life and touch each other and dance. It was a weird time.
Yes. Because this was always like that no intimacy between black folks and white folks, and so you could have a black musician or band playing and then only white folks dancing to it. And so the fact that you had a black band leader playing for a black person was just like a weird little fuck you.
Well, let's be clear on how far from each other these people had to dance. There would be actual chaperones at dances back in the 50s, 60s. I don't know about the 70s, but I think the 70s too for high school. They would take a balloon, a filled up balloon, and they would put it in between you, and they would tell you had to leave room for the Holy Spirit. For real. This really happened in real life.
Oh, I mean, yeah. Or they'd have rulers absolutely. I think it would sort of depend on where your school was in the 70s.
Yeah. But still on American Bandstand in the 70s, they were not getting, they weren't grinding like they were in the 90s.
Oh, good God, no. I mean, just, looking what happened to like American Bandstand, because like the Naughty show was solid gold because people were wiggling their hips.
And Soul Train.
That on a podcast?
Soul Train was the shit.
But I mean, and they just really had fun going through all of these just absolute stereotyped, like, what would happen in a movie here if it was another Western? And they just, like, guns coming out, guns being cocked, kidnappings, just all of the things. They're doing all the things.
Yeah. I mean, again, it's just they're just doing a spoof of every single Western you've ever seen. So, I mean, at any point, this was one of those movies you could pop into. And I know this is an anathema to people now, but you can just start this movie in the middle and be like, yeah, this feels familiar. Like, it doesn't, even if you've never seen it before, it'll still feel familiar because you've seen every scene in this movie 100 times over.
Except for the ones that are totally breaking the Hays Code, which they do
true.
again. In, like, this one cracked me up because I wouldn't have known about it if I hadn't gone and looked up, like, the production code, Hays Code. So when our sheriff goes into his sheriff's office, there's the jail cell in there, like every Western, and Gene Wilder is clearly the criminal, and he's nice to him, which was like a no.
Oh, yeah, that's true. I hadn't even... Oh, shit, I didn't even pick up on that.
I wouldn't have either. But yeah, so we have Gene Wilder, nice Jewish boy, playing a cowboy, which... God, I'm old. But there was a whole Simpsons about a Jewish guy dressing up as a cowboy to, like, do Westerns, and it was great. And I wonder sometimes how much that particular episode was at least a little bit of a nod to Blazing Saddles.
Well, that's pretty fun. Maybe it was. Those guys were doing a lot of pretending, though, because, I mean, almost all of the cowboy actors were at least bisexual, but usually gay. And there was a specific agent who taught them all how to act, quote-unquote, manly.
Butch him up?
Yep. So all of the manly men that grew up watching those cowboy films were watching a parody of what a gay guy thought manly men would act like.
And America fell for it because, let's face it, gays can do aesthetics.
Yeah, they know what looks good.
But my favorite line in all of this nonsense is when Gene Wilder's the Waco kid, who is like the stereotypical, like, fastest gun in the West gunslinger. I must have killed more men than Cecil B. DeMille.
Did Cecil B. DeMille kill people, or was it just that
mainly
he made
horses.
such shitty movies? Oh, okay.
So Cecil B. DeMille was like one of the big early film directors, cast of thousands, lots of these sword and sandal epics. And, he was just notorious for having extras, like, get really sick from, like, heat prostration. And yeah, a lot of horses died in Cecil B. DeMille productions. And so that's why...
So he's the reason why we see that little thing at the bottom of the movie, like, no horses were harmed in the filming of this movie?
Him and plenty of others. But, he's a big name. He contributed a lot to the cause.
They made a big deal about it in Braveheart, and that was like, I was like, why would they hurt a horse to make a movie? Well, now I know.
Yeah.
Jesus.
For the drama. And so that the whole, like, horse killing, horse harm thing comes up a couple of times. Like, there's a character that punches a horse and they get the horse to fall down. And then later on...
Oh, yeah, Mongo punches the horse.
Right. And then later on, he's, like, wrestling a horse and, like, flips it over. But that's a fake horse. But that's in the big brawl. But I was just laughing that they, like, really went in with this, like, screwing up horses trope. And again, like, that's... there's so much going on in here, but they went in for that one too.
This movie is so dense. I was like, my God, how are we going to do this in an hour and a half? If we went scene by scene, we'd be here for the rest of our lives.
Oh my God. Okay. So speaking of Mongo's like the big, scary, dumb guy, right? And again, this is one I'm like, do they realize, like, because he's also portrayed as mentally
challenged.
Right, but it's been so, like, twisted.
Perhaps has Down syndrome and is just a giant man, we'll say.
Yeah, and in fact, I think they were going for a depiction of somebody with Downs because mongoloid is actually the term that was used for a lot of people who had Down syndrome. And so that's where the Mongo came from.
Ah. Well,
but
Richard Pryor wrote
hand,
Mongo, by the way. And that was his favorite character. He wrote the hell out of Mongo. It was his favorite thing to do.
And I'm sort of wondering, like, where this was on the satire thing, or they actually just thought this was funny. Because saying somebody was retarded or that's so retarded was a very big punchline at this time in comedy.
That was just something we said nonstop growing up. It was
right.
It was like our mouths were a gun that fired bullets that said that word. It was crazy. It was.
Yes. And so I kind of think that was written as comedy, not as satire, but it can also still be seen as satire. They chained him up, so, he checked that white slavery box.
Oh, that is true. They did chain him up. Ah, wow.
Yeah.
They really were knocking them all out.
I mean, and I was totally laughing. But yes, and so this is where we finally get to, I did not know this, the first fart on film. Oh my God.
Yep. And it wasn't just the first. So that was another thing that Burton Gillum, he was like, I don't know if I want to fart on film, because he was like, is this really what I want to do? And Mel Brooks was like, you will never, because he was like, I'm gonna have to go back and work at the fire department again, and I can't do that if if I farted on film. And he was like, after this movie, you're never going to have to work at the fire department again. Just do it. You'll be the first person to ever do it in film. And he was like, and I never had to work at the fire department again. So, yeah. But, yeah, it was really hard for them to... And it's such a funny thing for us to think that, farting on film was such a faux pas and so looked down upon that he was afraid to even do it.
I mean, because at this point, this is a really crazy thing. But if you think about toothpaste commercials, you never see anybody spit. And in mouthwash commercials, they could barely show people swashing stuff around in their mouth, and gargling used to be a big thing, and you could not show somebody gargling. I'm curious, what's the first burp on film?
Ooh, yeah, I mean, and now I'm really fascinated about a lot of different things. I mean, I love the tampon commercials now where they're like, it's a period. Women have them. They got to use these things. It's going to be all right. It's like, yeah, why has it never been why didn't anybody just... the guys who are afraid to go buy tampons. Bro, just be a virgin by yourself and shut the fuck up. Nobody wants to watch you make an ass of yourself in line at the grocery store.
I mean, there were women who were embarrassed to buy period products for a long time, too. To, even admit that you personally or someone in your family might be having a period was I mean, that's how hard the shame went in.
It's fucking crazy. It's like squirrels have fucking periods. Literally everything with a vagina has a period. Can we move on with our lives? This isn't tough to figure out.
You got to clear out the biological 3D printer and get it ready to roll. I mean, come on.
Exactly.
It's got a cleaning cycle. Come on.
That is a photo. Yes. You put the oven on clean. That's exactly what they do. Yeah, what they do. That's exactly what you do. Put the oven on clean.
There you go. And so they're not that brave. Mel Brooks isn't willing to go to period products, but he does show drug use and drug paraphernalia. And this was also a super no.
Well, he really did knock them all out of the park. He didn't just do it a little bit either. He did it all the way.
Yes. And they really played into they were showing the kids at home, this is how you smoke a marijuana cigarette.
A marijuana cigarette.
Yes.
Thank you for that. Wow. You really
are
a
is 1974.
A marijuana cigarette.
A joint. I say hip, Jamie. They made me say hip.
You are hip and with it. I missed all of those things because... I didn't know that it was not allowed. Although it didn't even get me. I didn't know what they were talking about with the, Lily Von Shtupp banging Cleavon Little or Sheriff Bart. That's the biggest of all them breaking these rules, right?
Yeah,
it wasn't just interracial sex. It was very pointed interracial sex.
Yes. So for, again, kids at home, Shtupp is it German or is it just Yiddish for banging?
It's Yiddish for banging,
okay.
yeah.
Yes. And so the character Lily Von Schupp is like, the queen of fucking is basically what they're saying.
Yeah,
the
Lily Von
flower.
Fuck. It's just Yiddish for fuck. Lily Von Fuck is her name.
And she's just up there singing about how fucking sex with men all the time. I hate this. This sucks. Get your goddamn feet off my stage. I mean,
well, the song's called "I'm Tired," and so she's singing about how tired she is. But then it turns out she's tired from doing so much fucking.
Yes. And I mean, and there are some very horny puns in there. It's a lot of fun, and Madeline Kahn was like an actual like straight actress who, was known for like some very prestigious roles, and she was also considered a Hollywood beauty. But man, there were no roles. There were no speaking roles for women in Westerns. And so even if she was going to do like a comedy Western, she was all signed up for that baby.
Well, she started out as an opera singer too. So she was like, she was ready. Oh, and she's Jewish. So she was ready to be in this movie. Yeah. And didn't she end up on SNL too?
I don't know if Madeline Kahn was on SNL.
Maybe she wasn't. She was so funny. I feel like she had to have been, but maybe she wasn't.
Well, whether
she was. She was from 76 to 1995. She was a host 3 times.
Okay.
She was on it, but she didn't. She wasn't.
Yeah,
cast.
so she was like a legit actress who like came on and did that just the way they do now.
I knew I had seen her on that show at some point.
There you go.
But I mostly know her from Young Frankenstein and Blazing Saddles because she was amazing in both of them. Basically played the same character in both.
But yeah, it was the way that they sort of had her, invite the black sheriff back to her room, and then they dim the lights and they show the window. Like, that's what I was talking about, how typically scenes of passion were depicted.
I like the dramatic scenes of passion. That scene was supposed to go a little further. It was supposed to be her saying something like, "Ooh, honey, all those rumors about the size of black men is true," and he goes, "Well, I hate to disappoint you, but you're sucking on my arm." And but they cut that out of the movie.
But yeah, afterwards they definitely had this sort of like police academy or Naked Gun. Yeah, so they sort of had the whole Naked Gun scene where afterwards she just keeps offering him sausages and he's like, "Woo." Enough of that. But yes, I mean, I am sure people were losing their minds on interracial Cheerios ad level with just even the implied fact that these two people had comedy sex in a comedy movie.
Imagine if they had showed them eating Cheerios for breakfast the next morning. It would have been the end. Just in robes eating Cheerios. And not even like no footsie, no nothing. Just in robes eating Cheerios. The theaters would have been burned down.
Yeah. So here's a funny thing. There's the whole bit where the black sheriff is delivering the candygram in his Western Union thing. And for a long time, it would be hard to explain to people, like, yeah, somebody just comes to your door and delivers, like, food or candy to you. But we're back to that. He's just the Instacart guy.
But random people used to show up at your house to sell you stuff. It wasn't like you ordered them to your house. It was just like some dude with a big bag would show up on your doorstep and be like, "I got such and thus. I got hammers. I got whatever."
Well, there is that, but it would be sort of like if a friend of yours just like ordered food for you, and yeah, you just like people now would just like open the door. "Oh, I'm the Instacart guy," and you'll just open the door. And in fact, that was kind of the thing there. So you know how you get all these phishing emails to try to get you to open the email and engage and whatever? Yeah, the door-to-door salesman selling hammers or brushes or vacuum cleaners or whatever, people were getting sick of them. And so literally these people would like knock, 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 candygram.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. And so the whole thing about fooling Mongo with the exploding candygram was a little bit of like pushback to the desperate door-to-door salesman who's going to fool you into opening the door, even if you don't want a freaking vacuum cleaner.
That's amazing. I can't believe that would ever work. That sounds like me going pss, 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 to you and you being like, oh, yes, I'd like to have sex with you, sir.
But I mean, it's always this thing, like whatever's going on in society, somebody is going to figure a way to take advantage of either our better nature, like when somebody calls you on the phone and they're like, oh, hey, is Bob there? And you're like, oh, I'm sorry, you must have the wrong number. And now people use that as an opening to scam you on the phone, or just, your curiosity. Like, whatever the technology of the present is, there are always going to be people who are going to take advantage of those two things.
I imagine that used to work way better back in the day, that like the phone phishing thing, because back in the day we were fucking bored. Like, we were bored as shit because if you only had 4 channels on TV. So somebody calls you up on the phone and they're like, oh, well, so what is your name? You sound nice. And you'd sit there and fucking talk to a random person for no reason. It was weird as hell.
But on the other hand, how much they could scam you and how many people they could scam was way lower because it wasn't automated like it is now. So
that is true. They had, they had to put in the time. I mean, they were earning that money. So
like the Candygram Fuller brush man going around like Candygram now, like he had to still walk from door to door. So yeah, he was earning that money. Unlike now, you've got poor kidnapped people in like Chinese casinos that closed down during the pandemic, doing these online Instagram catfishing scams. But anyway.
Have you been the victim of one of these scams? Is this a story you need to share?
Oh, no, I haven't been the victim of the scams, but I am just so mad that I look at my phone so resentfully. And I remember the time when somebody would call you up and they'd say, oh, I'm looking for so-and-so. And they really would have the wrong number because we used to have to dial those damn buttons or turn the dials. And so you were being polite. You did something nice for somebody. And now people take advantage of that. And that really burns me.
That burns my buns.
It does. It does. And, speaking of buns, we get to see a lot of chorus lines in this, which, again, were an important part of every musical. That was like a third of all movies at this point. You had a bunch of guys in matching outfits and tight-fitting pants who would come dance on the stage for you. Unless they were women in tiny little outfits with feathers on their head.
The Rockettes type ladies.
Yes, yeah. Vegas showgirls.
Oh, is it just called a showgirl? What is the name? Is that a job? What is that job?
Well, I mean, so you'd have members of the chorus line and, usually be ladies or dudes, sort of depending on what message. And so if they're carrying Marilyn Monroe around on the
depending
stage,
on the availability of massive ostrich feathers to put
right,
on the ladies' heads. If they're short on ostriches, then we're going with all men. Bust out the white gloves.
But there's a lot of like sort of early no homo in this movie. Like there's definitely awareness of homosexuality, but it's sort of that lingering production code of like, we can't let people know that they exist by putting them on film. And so sort of they're really playing around with that kind of, again, like, is Mel Brooks acknowledging that? Like, how far is he pushing the envelope? Because there was a lot of just discomfort, like the earliest signs of discomfort of men being friends is happening at this point.
And I would like to just say that over the weekend, I made a discovery that I'd like to share because I found it to be really illustrative of how different life is now. But there was a bodybuilding article that was written in the 40s about this guy who invented this exercise, and it's called a rebounding pullover. Doesn't matter about the exercise. The way he invented it was the interesting thing. And I'd like to just point out again, this was in a bodybuilding magazine, not in some kind of weird erotica. And it was, we didn't feel like getting out of bed to lift weights. And so my friend and I were laying in bed and started doing these rebounding pullovers. And I was like, what the fuck? Why are two men laying in bed together? Because that just does not, I mean, it would not happen under any circumstance now. I mean, one of the guys is going to sleep on the floor and the other guy maybe on the bed. But these two guys are in bed together and they start lifting weights. And then their wives exclaim from the kitchen, oh my God, it's fucking over. Like now they're bringing weights to bed.
Yeah.
And then those two guys started a softcore porn / muscle magazine together. So things were way gayer back then, and they were very open about how gay they were, but it was like, it's not gay unless you're like, you say women are icky. I think that was really like, all right, it's gay if you're like speaking with a lisp and you run away from a woman if she tries to touch you.
Right, yeah, but bisexuality was just kind of like in the air. It was around, and so, yeah.
It was... Yeah.
And
also they were filled with so much speed. Nobody can be straight on speed. You just can't be straight on speed. Amphetamines don't allow you to be straight. That's not something you can do.
Because this is the whole thing. They talk about, representation matters. The Hays Code, the production code, stripped out all of this acknowledgement of the muddiness of human sexuality. It's like, no, it is this and it is that. And there will be no depiction of any ambiguity. God damn it.
Yeah, so all it did was just confuse and upset a lot of the people that they were trying to keep from going to the dark side.
And so, yeah, it's all.
And then they bought guns.
Oh, yeah.
Well, if I can't have sex, I'm going to do some shooting somehow.
Oh.
Bazinga.
Definitely. But so we end up back kind of at the railroad, and this is where the Star Trek rocks are. Like those big monumental rocks in the background that are at like those funny angles. Those are the Star Trek rocks.
Okay, I'm not super familiar with Star Trek or its rocks, but there's a particular Star Trek rock formation.
Yeah, that shows up in several episodes, and it is this very sort of iconic looking like angled rocks, and they have them in the cartoon with Bender and Fry and
Futurama.
Yeah, so they have them in Futurama, like where they do the Star Trek spoof episode. Like they have the Star Trek rocks in there. So if you're not familiar with Star Trek, but you do like Futurama, it's that episode. It's those rocks.
Simpsons in space.
Yes. So I mean, a lot of this stuff is funny, but I think Mel Brooks like works really hard to like throw in some other representation because he has a guy openly admitting that like, yeah, we killed all the Indians to get their land. Like, that's not the kind of thing you would ever say in a Western.
No. But he laid it out straight.
Yes. And so this whole thing where Hedley Lamar is like, and now we need a bunch of criminals to build our army. I'm like, this is where Putin descended into comic supervillainy. You open the jails to fill your army. I mean, this is what, like, you just paint your face green and put on a purple and black suit already, okay? And it was really kind of funny, like looking at like what counted as a criminal or deviant person at this point. And so, I mean, they just threw all the movie stereotypes in there. They've got the Nazis, the greasers, the bikers, the mujahideen.
That's why they had all those guys. So that gimmick was ripped off, or that bit was ripped off in like Airplane and Airplane 2 and all kinds of shit. But I didn't know why, and now I understand. They were showing every kind of specific criminal they could.
Right, and you've got the KKK, and of course the black sheriff dressing up in the KKK robes is always a good gag. But yeah, just absolutely, just like who are the bad folks in all the movies forever?
I wonder why the Methodists are involved in that.
Huh?
It's common criminals, motorcycle gangsters, Ku Klux Klan, Nazis, and Methodists.
Again, I can't explain all the jokes to you.
Wouldn't be funny if we could.
No. And then, of course, you've just got all these horrible criminals that are like, are you chewing gum? That was some, like, micromanager, Sheriff Atwood craziness.
Oh, but then he turns into a school teacher. And this is another joke that kids wouldn't get now because this isn't a thing anymore. But teachers used to say to students, like, oh, well, if you want to do this thing that's against the rules, you can only do it if you brought some for everyone. So he's standing in line chewing gum. He's not allowed. And so you were a goddamn teacher. How did this go over your head?
Oh, it was so obvious to me. I just didn't even mention it. I was like, oh my God, I've heard that so many times. Yeah.
But yeah, kids now would not have heard that. People born in the last 20 years probably haven't heard anything like that.
No, and but I did have fun with the guys in like the stereotypical like Mexican getup going, "I don't need no stinking badges." That's a really famous line from the Humphrey Bogart film Treasure of the Sierra Madre. And so I was watching that one, like it's a classic like black and white Western adventure film, and I was watching that with my dad, and like the corrupt Mexican sheriff says that to Humphrey Bogart. I like fell off the couch. I'm like, that's where that comes from? Oh my God.
It's always fun when you can watch these old movies and then see where they're getting their references from.
Right. And then we get okay, so you grew up in the East, so you never would have seen this, but as a kid driving around kind of rural California to go hiking and stuff, like when my grandparents lived in Arizona, we would actually drive from Washington State to go visit them in Arizona on occasion and do like hiking in between. And you would see these quote unquote Western.
Would you just take I-10 the entire way?
90.
Or does I-10 go up the coast?
5 goes up and down the coast.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay. So you take 5 to 10.
Yeah, no, 5s go north-south and the 0s go east-west.
Ah, wow. I can't believe I'm 47 and just learned that. And I love maps. That's fucking crazy. All right.
But you would see like these back of buildings, and it would be these Western towns that were just these false fronts. It was just a set. And so they have this whole joke of like rebuilding the towns as just these sets. And like there'd be the sign on the freeway like, come visit this Western town, you know, $2 a head or whatever. And so like these things actually would you just be driving in rural California or Arizona, and this movie set would just be sitting out there because it was dry and like the wood would never rot. And so somebody would take it up as a roadside attraction.
And so it was just the fronts of the buildings like in...
Right.
Yeah. So in the movie, they build a fake town in order to fool the cowboys who are coming in to destroy their town. And so they go and destroy the fake town, which is just painted storefronts, like in the Old West movie sets.
Yes, and they have the most...
I guess poking fun at the fact that nobody would be fooled by that fucking shit in the first place.
Well,
like,
and it's also...
It looks fake as shit.
And also some movie inside baseball, but then you get the joke at the end where they're like, so all these hard-working black folks and Chinese folks who made this town for you, all they want is a piece of land to call their own, and the guy's like, well... as long as there's no Irish. I was just like, that is some 1874 coming right through the middle.
There you go. That's the one bit of racism that we didn't carry forward into the modern day.
No. Now we just barf green on March 17th and call it a day.
Yep. If you live around here, it's Irish month. I swear to God, they hang Irish flags like it's Black History Month for Irish.
Oh my God. There was some alcohol brand that they were advertising St. Patrick's Eve.
Huh. Well, hey, you know, you got to get your drinking done somehow, I guess.
Waiting till 9 a.m. the day of, you know, who can wait that long?
9 a.m.? Well, I guess that's when they're waking up, huh?
Right.
They're sleeping in. Got to wake up early and start drinking on St. Patty's Day.
Right? Yeah, set my alarm. You know, sunrise. Good enough. Let's go.
It's a popular thing out here. People have been it's been in full swing.
But yeah, they were definitely having fun exploding the town because they were doing the bombs and they had like the little dummy bodies that were getting exploded up into the air. It's just so silly.
They had some really impressive stunt work in this film too. I imagine the stunt people in this movie had a lot of fun working with Mel Brooks.
And I mean, and they just kept the jokes coming all the way to the end. This movie, I don't know if it was the first movie that did it, but it was definitely adopted by other movies where you like break out of the movie set and you start like running around the movie lot and you go to the movie to watch the movie that you're filming. Like this very Pee-wee's Big Adventure.
Gremlins 2, Gremlins 2 was huge on that. I mean, they just took a ton of cocaine and watched Gremlins and they were like, oh yeah, we're going to make this meta as shit.
Oh.
But Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back.
They did it in that, okay.
In all of the Jay and Silent Bob movies, they did it. Yeah, they went around because they went on the Miramax set to stop a movie, and then they went around the Miramax set, and then they were in their own movie. Like, so they beat up James Vanderbeek and the guy from American Pie who were playing them in a movie. It got very meta. Spaceballs came out in 1985. That's where my brain was trying to get. So there was a very meta movie that came out in 1985, and it was Spaceballs.
There you go. But we have to enjoy the fact that they went with this movie with the classic, like, riding into the sunset. But first, they stop and get off their horses and get in a Cadillac before they drive off into the sunset.
I imagine there were a lot of people in the cowboy movies back in the day who had to do that because they couldn't ride horses.
Oh, my God. I mean, the person on the barrel, shot up close and people are, like, underneath, like, jiggling them. Okay, so when we were first starting this project, I'm like, what are we doing here? What's going on? I went back and like found a super early John Wayne movie to watch that was just like free somewhere. And it was called Ride 'em Cowboy. And this...
Oh, God.
This movie...
Boy, that's not a straight name either. That's... Especially in the post-Brokeback years. Boy, that's just... That sounds like a porn name, is what it sounds like. Sounds like... We're going to watch a very muscular man in chaps fuck another very muscular man in chaps.
I mean, but the thing is, this movie looked like what a high school, like a modern high school spoof of Westerns would look like. And that was like done as like a serious flick. And the outfit John Wayne was wearing looked like what you would expect a rodeo clown to wear. Like, the hat he was wearing, like, it was just nonsense. And the whole shtick was like he was able to ride this horse that nobody else could ride, and just the effects. Like, there were like 5 different horses that they showed bucking around with like actual rodeo guys on it, and it was just supposed to be a white horse, and none of these horses that they were showing in the long shots was a white. I mean, it was just like, ooh.
Couldn't even slap a coat of paint on that guy. Maybe dust him with some chalk. They were like, nope.
Well, yeah, because they were just pulling like
stock
random
footage.
clips of rodeo riders, and I mean, the only semi-authentic scene in that entire film was the dance that they had in somebody's living room, and you're like, because that's actually like how people entertained with each other. They went into somebody's living room in the 1930s and like danced around in those dresses with the crank-up gramophone, like. Because they just filmed the real thing, and that was the only authentic looking thing in the whole bit.
Yeah, people used to go to each other's houses and hang out. It's weird as shit to think about now. But just to like go and walk to imagine walking over to your neighbor's house and just ringing the doorbell and being like, hey, what are you guys doing? And just strolling on in. That would never happen. But like 40 years ago, it happened every fucking day.
Oh, a sign of like, this is what a good town we are. It's like nobody ever locks their doors. Like, people would just sort of like walk in and out of each other's houses, borrow a cup of sugar, look for their kids hanging out there. I mean, yeah, world is damn different. I mean, we now let people into like all of the most sort of like the information that they could cause the most harm to us willy-nilly at the drop of a hat. But don't you come into my house.
And for God's sake, don't touch me.
Ugh. Gross.
Well, have we done it? Have we finished the Blazing Saddles?
I think we have finished the Blazing Saddles, and I'm afraid I may have explained some jokes.
You did. You never actually said, though, do you think this movie do you recommend this movie to other people?
I mean, I think it's worth watching if you know what you're getting into.
Okay. What does that mean exactly?
That you know that this is a spoof of a very specific thing. But if you just go in blank, not knowing anything about it, I think some people, especially people born in the 21st century, would be like, I don't understand why this is a comedy. This is awful.
Yeah, I could see that. For sure. Yeah, it's not.
I mean, it's sort of like when I first saw the first South Park, like back when it was like little pieces of cardboard, of construction paper.
The Santa one?
Like,
oh my God,
yeah.
Oh, that was the funniest shit we ever saw in our entire lives back when that came out. Oh my God, we spent all Christmas watching that with my dad over and over and over.
I mean, my husband, like, that was one of the things he showed me. Like, I have access to this because I'm an internet guy.
Nice. Yeah.
And again, like, you went in with the right mindset. You kind of knew what you were in for. And that was the other thing. Like, people swearing and being offensive could be very funny because it was so rare.
Yeah. It wasn't like your average trip to Walmart where you hear somebody call somebody the N-word like behind the customer service desk every time you walk in. So
yeah, I mean, there was like this veneer of politeness over everyone in sort of everyday life, for better or for worse. But so like that's why Richard Pryor was so outrageous and funny. That's why George Carlin was so outrageous and funny. Like it was this rarity that punctuated things instead of people who just don't know how to use commas anymore, and so they put fuck in there instead.
Yeah, and so this movie and like those comedians you said, these weren't things that you could really watch out in the open. Like you wouldn't invite people to your house and sit down and watch this. You were in the basement with headphones on listening to this, like off an old record player or some shit, like, or watching this in the basement, or like, you know, like, or in some shitty movie theater.
Six of your friends, and you're like, okay, your mom's out at the store. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, you certainly, because we couldn't curse around our moms. I mean, that's the end. That's the end of your life. Could you curse around your mom? I couldn't curse around my mom. I mean, I still can't.
I mean, I definitely couldn't, but it would never have occurred to me to try.
Never! Cursing at your mom would have you would have thought about setting yourself on fire.
Oh God, yeah. I mean, I remember, I think it was in middle school, I was like on a school trip or something, and some of the kids were like really testing the limits. Like we're together, you know, by ourselves, and they're like saying shit, and I like couldn't bring myself to say it. I was like, I'm gonna find out. I found out. I'm gonna get in trouble somehow. I don't know how, but yeah.
You got me beat on being a goody two shoes, which I did not even think was humanly possible.
I told you we would have hated each other in high school.
Maybe. I don't know.
I was so tightly wound, man. And I still have my moments where I get into my head like that, but yeah.
Well, I probably wouldn't have noticed because I would have been talking nonstop. And if I wasn't talking, I would have been doing push-ups or reading a book. So any way you cut it, because the women were so confusing and mysterious to me at that point, I was just like, whatever, just do your thing. I have no idea what the fuck you're doing.
Okay, well, thank God neither of us had to get married right out of high school or in high school. What I'm trying to say is don't become a teen parent. And if there's one lesson to take out of the 19th century, that's going to be it.
There you go. And that was when I was tasked as a PE teacher to teach health. And I was like, with all the shit that is coming in from parents, my health class was do not have sex, do not be naked around another human being, and if at all possible, shower with your clothes on. Let's move on. That was it. That's all I did. I wasn't going any further than that. Just stay away from people of the opposite sex.
But don't be gay.
And it wasn't that, because it was just a middle school, and I was just like, I don't care what you do. Just do not have sex. Do not have sex, for God's sake. You're children.
Yeah. All right.
They were 16-year-old 8th graders, but they were still children, and they were still not to have sex.
Dude.
Or to come within 6 feet of Mr. Lewis at any time.
All right. Well, we should wrap this puppy up. And I have no idea what we're doing next, but you'll find out.
Yes, so it could just be anything.
Yeah.
It could be anything at all.
Yeah. Don't worry. We'll be back with another episode.
We will. Have an awesome week.
You can find more of Jamie and how he can make you stronger at plagueofstrength.com. You can learn more about old American food on my other podcast, The History of American Food. And you can always reach out to us by email at pcgpodcasters@gmail.com. And you can find more dope beats like this one from royalraven.com.